Have you ever had the feeling that reality glitched for just a second? Not metaphorically, literally. You walk into a room and forget why. You think about someone you haven't seen in years, and suddenly they text you. You notice repeating numbers everywhere. You experience moments that feel too perfectly timed to be random. Most people ignore these moments. But what if these aren't random at all? What if these are not bugs in your brain, but clues about the system you live inside? Because for decades, scientists, physicists, philosophers, and computer experts have quietly been asking a question that sounds insane at first. What if reality itself is artificial? What if your memories, your choices, your emotions, your entire existence are happening inside something built? This is simulation theory. And today we're not talking about the usual arguments you've heard 1,000 times. We're talking about the evidence almost nobody discusses, because some of it is genuinely disturbing. Let's start with something strange. The universe should not work. Seriously. If you look at physics closely, reality begins to resemble software more than nature. Think about video games. Game developers don't render entire worlds at maximum detail all the time. That would waste processing power. Instead, games render only what players observe. Now look at quantum physics. Particles behave differently when observed. Read that again, not metaphorically, literally. Experiments repeatedly show that particles can exist as probabilities until measurement occurs, then suddenly they become fixed. For decades, scientists have argued about why, but ask yourself something uncomfortable. Why would reality behave as if information only becomes fully generated when someone checks? Why would observation matter? And that's where things become weird. Because this isn't the only example. Look at the speed of light. Why is there a universal speed limit? Why can absolutely nothing exceed it? Physicists describe it mathematically, but explanation is different from description. If reality were computational, speed limits suddenly make sense. Information transfer has limits, processing has limits, bandwidth has limits, even your computer has limits, so why wouldn't reality? And here's something even stranger. Space itself appears to have a minimum resolution. At incredibly tiny scales, physicists suspect space-time may not be infinitely smooth. Instead, reality might come in discrete units, almost like pixels. Imagine zooming into a digital photograph. Eventually you stop finding detail. You find pixels. Now imagine doing that to reality itself. Some researchers believe that's exactly what we're discovering, but maybe that's still too abstract. Let's talk about coincidence. Because coincidence is where many people begin questioning reality. Have you noticed how life sometimes feels scripted? Not always, but occasionally. You think of a rare object. Suddenly it appears everywhere. You learn a new word. Now everyone says it. You imagine something unlikely. Days later it happens. Psychologists call some of this pattern recognition, and they're right. But here's the uncomfortable part. Pattern recognition itself exists because patterns exist. Human brains evolved specifically to detect hidden structures. So the real question becomes, how many coincidences are too many? And this leads us to information. Because reality appears fundamentally made from information, not matter, information. Modern physics increasingly suggests physical reality may emerge from informational structures. Think about that. The chair you're sitting on, the phone you're holding, your body, your thoughts. At fundamental levels, reality increasingly looks less like objects and more like data. John Wheeler, one of the most respected physicists ever, proposed something shocking. It from bit, reality from information. Not everyone agrees, but the fact that serious scientists even discuss this should make you pause. Now let's talk about something almost nobody mentions. Compression. Reality appears extremely efficient, suspiciously efficient. The laws of physics apply everywhere. The same equations describe galaxies and atoms. Why? Because reusable rules are computationally efficient. Game engines do this. Simulations do this. Instead of creating infinite custom rules, systems reuse existing frameworks. Reality appears to do exactly that. And then there's mathematics. This may be the strangest evidence of all. Why should mathematics work? Think carefully. Humans invented symbols. Yet somehow these symbols describe black holes, planet motion, quantum mechanics, electricity. Why should abstract equations written by biological creatures predict invisible parts of reality? Why is the universe understandable at all? Some scientists call this the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. But maybe mathematics works because reality itself is mathematical. And mathematical systems are exactly what computers run. Now here's where people usually object. If reality is simulated, who created the simulation? That's the wrong question. Because if we're simulated, creators may themselves be simulated, and they're creators too. The problem never disappears. Instead, simulation theory shifts the question. Not who created reality, but at what level are we? And suddenly things become uncomfortable. Because think about your memories, your personality, your preferences. You assume continuity. You assume the person who woke up today is the same person who slept yesterday. But how do you know? Your brain reconstructs reality constantly. Memories change, identity changes, perception changes. You experience continuity, but experience itself might be generated. Now consider dreams. Every night your brain creates worlds, characters, places, conversations, entire experiences. While dreaming they feel real. Only later do you realize they weren't. What if waking life simply feels more stable because the system allocates more resources? Scary thought. But wait, there's something even stranger. The anthropic problem. The universe appears absurdly fine-tuned. Change gravity slightly. No stars. Change constant slightly. No chemistry. Change expansion rate slightly. No galaxies. Physicists debate why these values are so precise. Some propose multiverses. Others propose unknown physics. Simulation theory suggests something simpler. Parameters were selected. Not proof, but interesting. Now let's address the obvious criticism. There is no direct evidence. True, there isn't. But absence of direct evidence is not absence of possibility. Nobody saw atoms for thousands of years. Nobody saw black holes directly for decades. Many ideas begin as philosophical questions before becoming scientific ones. Simulation theory sits somewhere between philosophy and physics, and maybe that's exactly why people avoid it. Because it threatens something deeper. Free will. If reality is simulated, are your choices real? Maybe. Maybe not. But here's the twist. Even in a simulation, experiences remain experiences. Pain still hurts. Love still matters. Fear still feels real. Meaning doesn't disappear simply because reality may operate differently than expected. If anything, meaning becomes more important. Because conscious experience itself becomes the mystery. And here's the evidence nobody talks about most. The fact that you're capable of questioning reality at all. Think about that. The universe created beings capable of analyzing the universe. Particles arranged themselves into brains. Brains became conscious. Consciousness started asking whether reality itself exists. That's either completely normal or unbelievably strange. Maybe simulation theory is true. Maybe it's completely wrong. But the important part isn't the answer. It's the question. Because once you seriously consider the possibility, you start noticing things differently. You look at coincidence differently. You look at information differently. You look at reality differently. And maybe that's the real reason people avoid this topic. Not because it's ridiculous, but because it's difficult to return to normal afterwards. So next time reality feels slightly off, next time coincidence feels too perfect, next time existence itself feels strange, ask yourself one question. If reality were simulated, would you even expect obvious proof? Or would the strongest evidence be hidden inside the ordinary things you stopped noticing long ago? And maybe, that's exactly where it has been the entire time. If this video changed the way you think, comment below with one word. Simulation. Because I want to know how many people are starting to notice the same things.